You know that feeling when you look at your calendar for the week and it is just this solid, intimidating wall of color-coded blocks.
Oh, absolutely. The dreaded rainbow of stress.
Right. You've got like the blue blocks for internal meetings, the red blocks for urgent product deadlines, the green blocks for volunteer commitments, and the yellow ones for family stuff.
Yeah, and no white space at all.
Exactly. Zero white space. You are moving from the absolute second you wake up, chugging coffee, rushing through traffic, jumping from Zoom call to Zoom call, right up to the second your head hits the pillow.
It's exhausting just hearing you describe it.
It really is. And yet at the end of the week, you sit there in the quiet and think, well, I was constantly in motion. I was sweating. I was stressed out. I was talking all day long.
But did I actually get anything done?
Yes. Did I get anything meaningful done? It's that sinking, hollow realization that you are completely confusing activity with effectiveness.
Yeah, that's a very common trap.
It's like you're running on a treadmill at max incline, just completely exhausted, but the scenery hasn't changed at all.
It is a universally exhausting human experience.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is, it is entirely by design. Our own design, really.
Wait, really? We do this to ourselves on purpose?
We do. We have this deep-seated psychological quirk where we equate motion with progress. We assume that if our calendars are overflowing, well, our lives just must be purposeful.
Because we look important.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But busyness is often just a very respectable hiding place.
A hiding place?
Yeah. It's a shield. We use it to avoid the incredibly hard, uncomfortable work of actual discernment. We fill every available cubic inch of space in our schedule so we just don't have to pause and ask the terrifying question,
Which is,
am I even in the right space to begin with?
wow, am I even in the right space? That hits hard. And that exact tension, the war between just being constantly busy and being truly deeply effective, that's what we are tearing apart today.
It's such a vital topic.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into a brilliant concept called mapping the mission portfolio. Now, originally, the source material detailing this concept was, it was actually written for church leaders who were trying to organize and audit their ministries.
Right, it has a very specific original context.
It does, but as you dig into the actual mechanics of it, its dissection of why human beings hoard obligations and how organizations just drift away from their core purpose.
And the sheer courage it takes to prune back the things you love.
Exactly. All of that is a masterclass for absolutely anyone. I mean, whether you are running a Fortune 500 company, managing a local nonprofit, or honestly just trying to figure out why your own personal life feels so suffocatingly busy.
The insights are completely profound. The mechanics of how human beings accumulate obligations without ever stopping to evaluate them, that's universal.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what kind of group it is.
No, it doesn't matter if you were looking at a corporate board, a community theater group, or literally just a family deciding on their weekend commitments.
Everyone faces this.
Exactly. The diagnosis of why we drift into this state of overwhelmed, exhausted obligation, what the text calls a kind of busy faith in our own productivity, it reveals so much about human psychology.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how to fix this massive problem of being completely overloaded, we first have to understand how we slip into it so quietly.
Right, because nobody wakes up on a Tuesday and decides to intentionally ruin their own schedule.
Obviously not. And there's a fascinating central warning in the text here. It basically says that an organization or a person can be incredibly busy, incredibly generous, highly active, and yet completely, totally misaligned from their actual purpose.
Yeah, it's a stark warning, and it fundamentally challenges our basic metrics for success.
How so?
Well, we tend to think that if an organization is humming with activity, if the parking lot is full and everyone is running around, it must be thriving.
Right. Busyness equals success.
But mission drift, the process of slowly losing your core focus, it almost never happens through some scandalous rebellion or a sudden dramatic failure.
It's not a big explosion.
No, not at all. It doesn't happen because of a conscious decision to abandon your goals. It happens respectably. It is the slow, quiet, creeping accumulation of unexamined good intentions.
Unexamined good intentions, that right there is the trap.
Exactly. I mean, think about how any project starts. It almost always begins because there is a real, tangible need. People see a gap, they invest themselves, they build a program, and it bears fruit.
It works, at least initially.
Right. It works. But then, as always happens in life, time passes, the season changes. The context of the community or the market or your own life shifts.
Things evolve.
They do. Yet the structure that was built to address that original need, it just remains standing. And at first, preserving that structure looks like faithfulness. It looks like loyalty to the cause.
Because it used to be so important.
Exactly. But when continuation becomes automatic rather than discerning, you have moved out of the realm of stewardship and into the realm of sheer mindless inertia.
That reminds me so much of an analogy in the text about inherited furniture.
Oh, I love that analogy.
It's so good. It's like cleaning out a family home. You inherit this massive, heavy, dark wood credenza from your grandmother, and it is objectively a beautifully crafted piece of furniture.
Subjectively a good thing.
Right. But you live in a modern, 800 square foot apartment. You literally do not have room for it. It completely clashes with your life. You're constantly stubbing your toe on it, and it just blocks the hallway.
Did you keep it anyway?
But you keep it because, well, it's grandma's credenza. Nobody in the family has the courage to stand up and ask, does this piece of furniture actually belong in this house anymore?
So true.
We just quietly suffer around it. And organizations do the exact same thing with their legacy programs and initiatives, don't they?
They absolutely do. The psychology behind that credenza is exactly what drives organizational overload. There is a profound distinction we have to make here between faithfulness and familiarity.
Faithfulness versus familiarity. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, why do we preserve things just because we remember them fondly? Memory is a beautiful gift. It provides a group with continuity, with a shared narrative, with identity.
Right, it tells us who we are.
But memory becomes incredibly dangerous when it hardens into obligation. A team, a family, or an entire organization can actually become more loyal to the memory of past fruitfulness than to the present reality of their actual calling.
Wow. So they confuse emotional attachment with strategic centrality.
Precisely. To keep a program alive simply because it would feel like an emotional betrayal to end it, that is being governed by sentimentality, not wisdom.
It's making decisions based on nostalgia.
Yeah, and unexamined continuation can actually become a form of dishonesty. We tell our stakeholders, or we tell ourselves, that we are keeping this initiative going because it's vital to the mission.
When really,
If we look in the mirror, we know we're just keeping it because we are terrified of the complex emotions and the conflict that will inevitably surface if we shut it down.
we're just avoiding the grief.
It's-
And there is a concept that builds on this, which I think perfectly illustrates how this decay happens in real time. It's the shift from catalytic work to symbolic work.
Oh, this is one of the most vital frameworks for evaluating any kind of effort.
So what makes something catalytic?
A catalytic initiative is one that actually changes the environment. It initiates movement, it opens new doors, it multiplies impact, it creates forward momentum that did not previously exist.
Okay, so like a startup's very first disruptive product.
Yes. Or a community outreach program that actually pulls people out of poverty. It catalyzes change.
Right, it's the spark that starts the fire.
But over time, if the context changes, if the market evolves, or if the initial need is just met, that exact same initiative might degrade into a purely symbolic ministry or program.
Meaning it doesn't start fires anymore.
Exactly. It no longer drives any real change. It merely stands as a monument, a symbol for something the organization used to value.
And monuments are expensive to maintain.
They are. It consumes financial resources, time, and human energy without multiplying any value whatsoever. You can literally spend millions of dollars and thousands of volunteer hours maintaining a symbol of your past glory while completely failing to invest in the catalytic work required for today.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on this a little bit because I can hear people listening to this and getting defensive.
Sure, go ahead.
I get the danger of bloated programs, but if a legacy program, let's say it's a local soup kitchen that has been running for 30 years, or even a legacy software product at a tech company,
Yep.
if it is actually still helping a few people or keeping a few legacy clients happy, cutting it feels incredibly cold. Isn't doing something good always better than doing nothing? Aren't we just importing ruthless, cutthroat corporate downsizing and pretending it's some kind of higher wisdom?
That is the exact defense mechanism that springs up in almost every single organization to avoid the pain of pruning.
Because it sounds good, but we are doing good.
It sounds completely unassailable. But if we connect this to the reality of the physical world, the answer comes down to one undeniable fact, and that is finitude.
Finitude.
Yes, your resources are finite. Your time on this earth is finite. Your team's emotional bandwidth is finite.
Right. We aren't infinite beings. We literally can't do it all.
Exactly. Unexamined busyness drains the absolute strongest leaders. It spreads funds incredibly thin, like scraping too little butter over too much bread.
That is a very vivid image.
It creates a pervasive culture of chronic strain where everyone is perpetually exhausted, but no one feels successful. So to answer your pushback, the true cost of maintaining a misaligned, symbolic program is not just the line item on the budget.
It's the opportunity cost.
It is the massive, invisible opportunity cost. It is what you could be doing if those resources, that brainpower, and that enthusiasm were actually freed up.
Right, you're missing out on the new things.
By giving an unexamined, sentimental yes to a symbolic program that only helps a few people out of habit, you are implicitly giving a no to a new catalytic opportunity that could help thousands and actually matches your current calling.
Man, that opportunity cost is the silent killer of effectiveness. Because you just don't see the things you never had the energy to start. You are bleeding out your best energy on things that merely survive rather than fiercely investing in things that thrive.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So, if we recognize that we are burning out on this symbolic work and that our good intentions are actually leading to a fragmented, exhausted state,
We need a new standard.
right, what is the standard? If the goal isn't just doing a lot of good things, what are we actually aiming for?
To answer that, we have to look at the theological anchor of the source material. Now again, this was written for a faith-based context initially, but the principle of outward orientation is a master key for any group.
The idea that we are sent, not gathered.
Exactly. The argument is that an organization should not begin with management, but with mission. There is this concept of being a sent people. It pulls from the historical text where Jesus tells his followers, "As the Father has sent me, even so I am sending you."
Right.
The core idea is that the group does not exist for itself. It is not supposed to be a self-absorbed mirror where the members just sit around admiring their own internal programs, holding endless committee meetings about the committee meetings.
Which happens all the time. Instead, it's meant to be an outpost.
Yes, an outpost.
But I absolutely love that phrase, an outpost. I mean, think about what an outpost actually is in the real world.
It's on the edge.
Yeah, an outpost exists for a purpose vastly larger than its own walls. It is established forward, out on the frontier, at the very edge of the map where the elements are harsh and the work is actually pressing.
It's gritty.
It's gritty. It's not meant to be a comfortable spiritual refuge, and it certainly isn't a country club with exclusive membership perks. The metaphor used is that any blessing, any resource, any talent you have is meant to flow outward like a river, not stagnate internally like a swampy pond.
And internalizing that outpost mentality completely shifts your metric of success. You move away from measuring busyness.
Like, how many events did we hold? How full is the calendar?
Right, and you start measuring fruitfulness. There's a heavy reliance here on an ancient agricultural metaphor, the vine and the branches.
Okay, tell me about that.
Fruitfulness is not presented as a modern, stressful business metric where you just whip the team to hit a quarterly KPI.
Yeah.
It's presented as an organic reality.
Right, because a branch on an apple tree doesn't sit there stressing out, clenching its muscles, trying to force an apple to pop out.
Exactly. The branches do not generate life by straining or panicking or organizing another task force. They bear fruit by abiding,
By abiding.
by remaining deeply connected to the root source of their life and purpose. But here is the most crucial, and honestly often the most painful, part of that metaphor.
What's that?
The gardener doesn't just cut off the dead branches. The gardener prunes the fruitful branches so they can bear even more fruit.
Wait, I need to stop you there because pruning a fruitful branch sounds entirely counterintuitive. Why would you cut something that is working?
It does seem strange at first glance.
And let me push back again on this word pruning. When a CEO or a manager stands up in a meeting and says, "We're doing some pruning," literally everyone in the room updates their resume.
Oh, for sure. Panic sets in immediately.
Right. It sounds like a euphemism for firing people and slashing budgets. Oh, we aren't experiencing massive revenue failure, we're just pruning. How is this not just corporate speak?
It is entirely fair to be suspicious of that word because it has absolutely been weaponized by bad management.
Yeah, totally.
But the framework here reclaims the concept entirely. This is not a reactive corporate exercise to save the bottom line. It is proactive stewardship.
Proactive.
Yes. There's a defining phrase here. Pruning is not punishment. It is preparation.
Preparation, not punishment. I like that.
Think about a master gardener. They approach a rose bush that is blooming beautifully, but they take out the shears and they cut away healthy green growth.
Which feels wrong.
It feels wrong, but why do they do it? Because if the bush produces too many blooms, the root system cannot support them all.
Ah, so they dilute the energy.
Exactly. The flowers will be small, weak, and short-lived. By cutting away the good, they make room for the great. It is actually an act of profound mercy to the plant.
That makes a lot of sense.
Many organizations, and individuals for that matter, fear pruning because they mistakenly equate any reduction with loss or failure. But excessive growth, wild growth, and misplaced growth all hinder true productivity.
You can actually grow yourself to death.
You absolutely can. Pruning is the mature, sober recognition that seasons change. Sometimes a program, a job, or a commitment hasn't failed at all. It was wonderful to help people. But it has simply completed its season. It has done what it was meant to do. Pruning requires the humility to admit that you cannot carry everything forever if you want to remain effective in the present.
Okay, so if we accept this, if we accept that we are required to be fruitful, and that doing so demands we take the shears to our own overgrown lives and organizations, that creates a massive logistical problem.
Oh, it gets very complicated very fast.
Because if we are staring at a tangled, thorny mess of commitments, how do we actually decide what stays and what gets cut without just offending everyone involved and causing total chaos?
This is where we transition from the high-level philosophy of pruning down to incredibly practical, on-the-ground strategy.
We need a system.
You need a system to map the chaos, and that system is called the mission portfolio.
The mission portfolio, like a financial portfolio.
Exactly like a financial portfolio. A financial portfolio is the total collection of your investments, managed for a specific goal. Your mission portfolio is the total shape of your organization's or your life's outward calling. To make sense of it, you cannot just look at it as one massive, overwhelming to-do list. You have to categorize it.
So if we're constantly confusing our main purpose with our side projects, how do we untangle them?
By using buckets.
Buckets. I love how this is framed. You have to ruthlessly sort every single thing you do into one of 4 specific buckets. Let's dive into the first one, which is the core.
The core consists of your absolute non-negotiables. These are the direct, unadulterated expressions of your primary calling.
So the main.
The main thing. If you are a hospital, the core is healing sick patients. If you are a bakery, the core is baking exceptional bread.
Right.
For the church in the source text, it's evangelism and discipleship. For you individually in your career, this is the essential, unique work that only you can do. The work that defines your actual value.
And I imagine you have to protect this bucket above all else.
The core must be fiercely, almost aggressively protected. Because if the core weakens, everything else you do becomes a hollow shell.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, if the bakery's bread tastes terrible, it really doesn't matter how good their Instagram marketing is.
Exactly. Nobody cares about your social media if the product is bad.
Mhm.
Which brings us to the second bucket. Supportive?
Supportive. Okay, what goes in there?
Supportive activities are the infrastructures that strengthen and enable the core. They are the accounting departments, the training manuals, the IT systems, the communication pipelines.
So behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, this work is rarely glamorous. It doesn't usually get standing ovations. But without it, the core collapses under its own weight.
There is a beautiful analogy used for this supportive bucket in the text. It says, a trellis does not produce grapes, but it enables the vine to flourish.
That's a perfect visual.
It is. The
Yeah.
trellis is the wooden structure. The vine is the living thing that grows the fruit. But there is a massive existential warning attached to this relationship between the trellis and the vine.
The warning is the trap of trellis worship.
Trellis worship.
Yes. If the supportive ministries or infrastructures ever replace the core focus, the organization begins to die.
Oh, wow.
You see this all the time in the corporate world, especially in tech. A company spends all its time optimizing its internal JIRA boards, creating endless workflow diagrams, and restructuring its HR policies.
Building an incredibly elaborate, beautiful trellis.
Right, but they stop shipping actual software. They stop growing grapes. You have to constantly remind yourself that the trellis only have value because it holds up the vine.
Do not worship the trellis. I feel like I need that tattooed on my arm.
Okay, so we have the core, we have the supportive trellis. The third bucket is experimental.
Experimental initiatives are the sandbox. They are ideas that are highly promising but completely unproven. They represent innovation.
But there's a catch, right?
A big one. The key to this bucket is that Anything placed here must be given a strict time limit for evaluation.
I think this bucket is secretly the most liberating one of the four, because it protects an organization from two deadly extremes.
How? Well, on one side, it protects you from the paralyzing fear of trying anything new because you aren't committing to doing it forever, right? It's just an experiment.
Right, it lowers the stakes.
But on the other side, it protects you from recklessness. You don't just launch a new massive program and blindly assume it will work and merge it right into the core. You give the idea space to breathe without confusing its possibility with permanence.
It contains the risk. It's a very smart way to handle innovation. And finally, we reach the fourth bucket, which is universally the most difficult to deal with, discontinuable, which is often referred to as legacy.
These are the initiatives, the programs, the products that may have once served the organization beautifully. They were probably the core 10 years ago.
Almost certainly.
But they no longer fit the current capacity, the current identity, or the current market. So why is this specific bucket so incredibly painful for people to confront?
Because people do not merely grieve the loss of a schedule or a task, they grieve the loss of their identity.
Or identity.
Think about it. When you tell a volunteer team that you are shutting down the annual banquet they have run for 15 years, they remember the late nights, the sacrifices, the friendships forged in the kitchen. Their identity is wrapped up in that work.
So they fight to keep it.
They do. But if you yield to that grief and refuse to act, you create a tragedy. Keeping a ministry or a project alive past its natural lifespan turns it into a museum piece rather than a living instrument.
A museum piece. That is such a haunting way to describe a program.
It is, but it's accurate. A living body, by definition, changes as it grows. It sheds old cells, it adapts to new environments. A museum just meticulously preserves what once was.
It is perfectly clean, perfectly still, and entirely dead.
Exactly. An organization has to choose which one it is going to be.
Think about your own life right now. Just look at your calendar, look at your inbox. Are you treating every single task, every single legacy project, every single email as a core priority? Because if everything is central, nothing is.
That's a profound realization.
If you treat everything as a core priority, you're just mathematically guaranteeing your own exhaustion.
But that creates a practical dilemma, doesn't it?
Right.
Now that we have these four buckets, core, supportive, experimental, and discontinuable, how do we actually evaluate a specific individual activity?
Yeah, how do you sort them?
How do you look at a program and objectively know which bucket it belongs in? You can't just guess.
You need a set of lenses to look through. You need criteria. And there are 4 specific lenses we can use to interrogate every single thing we are doing. The first lens is alignment.
Alignment asks a very blunt question. Does this activity fit who we are now?
Not who we were.
Right, not who we were 10 years ago when the founders started this thing.
Yeah.
Not who the incredibly successful church or company down the street is. Does it fit our specific identity and our specific direction today?
This lens exposes what I like to call the imitation trap.
Oh, the imitation trap. Explain that.
You see someone else succeeding wildly with a certain project, like a competitor launches a brilliant podcast or another local charity hosts a massive gala.
Sure.
And you think, wow, look at their success. We should do that too. And you launch one without ever asking if it aligns with your unique organizational DNA.
Which is a disaster.
It is. Imitation without a genuine internal calling just leads to deep fragmentation. You end up as a second-rate copy of someone else.
Exactly. You lose yourself. The second lens is impact.
Impact.
This is all about the fruit we discussed earlier. You have to look past the activity metrics and look for evidence of actual transformation.
So not just attendance numbers.
Right. What is actually happening as a result of this program? Are lives being changed? Are people growing? Or is it just a busy calendar event that makes everyone feel productive for an afternoon?
The third lens is cost efficiency. And we have to be really careful here because this isn't just about reading a balance sheet.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It asks, what is the true price of this initiative? Yes, look at the financial cost. But more importantly, look at the time cost, the leadership bandwidth cost, and most crucially, the volunteer emotional energy cost.
That phrase, volunteer emotional energy, that is the hidden ledger that bankrupts most organizations.
Because it doesn't show up on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. An initiative might be virtually free financially, it might cost $0 to run, but it might be completely draining the joy, the enthusiasm, and the stamina of your best, most dedicated people.
We've all seen this. Have you ever seen someone who has been running the same weekend event for a decade?
Oh, yeah. They are resentful.
They sigh heavily when you bring it up. They secretly pray for rain so the event gets canceled. That is emotional cost, and it is exorbitant.
Which leads directly into the fourth lens.
Sustainability.
Sustainability. Can we keep doing this?
Can this program endure faithfully year after year without relying on hidden burnout? Or is the entire thing propped up entirely on the heroic, unsustainable, white-knuckled sacrifice of a few exhausted saints? If a program only survives because 3 people are working 80-hour weeks and neglecting their families, it is not sustainable.
Not at all.
And if it's not sustainable, it is fundamentally unhealthy no matter how much good it appears to be doing.
To really cement how these four lenses interact, let's look at a specific case study from the text.
Let's do it.
Imagine a mid-sized organization, in this case a church, that has been running the exact same set of ministries for 20 straight years.
Very common scenario.
Very common. They have 3 main things: a highly visible, beloved food pantry, a massive, high-energy youth ministry, and a tiny, quiet neighborhood outreach that hardly anyone ever attends.
Okay, got the picture.
On paper, looking at the schedule, they look like a thriving, active community. But when the leadership finally sits down and forces themselves to look through these 4 lenses, alignment, impact, cost, and sustainability, they make a shocking discovery.
What do they find?
They aren't a dead church.
Yeah.
They are a misordered one.
A misordered one. I see this exact same scenario play out in the tech world all the time.
Really? How so?
A startup has a legacy software product, a flashy new app division, and a weird little side project some developers built on a weekend. It's the same dynamic. So what happens when this church applies the lenses?
They start with the 20-year-old food pantry. Everyone loves it because it's their legacy.
Right.
But when they look at alignment and impact, they realize the neighborhood has completely changed over 2 decades.
It's not the same place it was.
Right. There are now 3 government-funded agencies within a mile doing food distribution exponentially better and more efficiently. The church's pantry is redundant. It has lost its catalytic impact.
It's just a symbol now.
Exactly. Next, they look at the youth ministry through the lens of sustainability. They realize the leaders are burning out rapidly. They don't need more pizza parties and big events. They need deep theological training and rest. It is completely unsustainable.
And then they look at the runt of the litter.
Exactly. They look at the underattended neighborhood outreach. It looks small. It lacks flash. But when they look closely at the impact lens, they realize the few relationships being formed there are incredibly deep.
It's actually working.
People's lives are actually being transformed. It is highly catalytic.
So what looked impressive and untouchable, the legacy food pantry, was actually dead weight.
Yep.
What looked active, the youth ministry, was actually a crisis of burnout.
Right.
And what looked tiny and insignificant, the small outreach, was actually their most fruitful core work.
It's a total paradigm shift.
But this brings up a massive friction point. My concern here is specifically with that impact lens.
What's the concern?
How do you evaluate fruit or impact without becoming an impatient corporate bean counter? If you plant apple seed on Monday, you don't cut down the sapling on Friday because it hasn't produced an apple. Fruit takes time. How do we balance accountability with patience?
It is a vital nuance, and the framework addresses it head-on. True fruitfulness is concrete, but it operates in distinct seasons.
So it's not always immediate.
Exactly. It explicitly includes delayed, hidden work. Think about a therapist, a teacher, or a pastor. A conversation you have with a struggling student today might not bear visible fruit for 10 years.
So you have to wait.
You have to have the maturity to understand that subterranean growth is happening. Patience is absolutely non-negotiably required.
Okay, so we give things time.
Yes, however, and this is the razor-sharp distinction we must make, patience is not the same as indifference to barrenness.
Wow. Patience is not the same as indifference to barrenness.
An organization must be relentlessly honest with itself. Are you truly prayerfully waiting on a slow season of maturity? Or are you just excusing a complete lack of life, a total barrenness, simply because cutting the dead branch would be politically or emotionally painful?
We often label our cowardice as patience.
We do.
We use the language of seasons to hide our refusal to act. Looking honestly through these 4 lenses, alignment, impact, cost efficiency, and sustainability, it inevitably leads to a really uncomfortable, unavoidable realization.
We have to make cuts.
If we do this audit, we are going to have to stop doing some things. We are going to have to look at perfectly good opportunities, perfectly nice people, and say no.
And that is incredibly hard.
It brings us to what might be the hardest psychological hurdle of all. The sacred art of saying no.
For a huge portion of the population, especially those in service-oriented fields, healthcare, education, or just deeply empathetic people in personal relationships. Saying no feels like a moral failure.
It feels mean.
It feels fundamentally unloving.
Yeah.
If someone asks for help and you have two hands, you feel obligated to help. But we have to radically redefine saying no. It is not a failure of compassion. It is the rigorous, necessary discipline of stewardship.
The text provides these incredibly powerful historical and biblical examples of what it calls holy refusal, and they completely flip the script on how we view availability.
Give me an example.
Take the story of Nehemiah. He is literally up on a wall rebuilding the defenses of Jerusalem. It is his singular, vital mission,
Right.
and his enemies keep sending messages, trying to call him down to the plains to meet with them, to negotiate, to just distract him. And his response is legendary. He basically says, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down.
It is a refusal to be distracted from the primary assignment.
Yes. And even more powerfully, it points to Jesus himself. I mean, if anyone had a mandate for compassion, it was him.
Absolutely.
Yet the texts constantly show him withdrawing to the wilderness to pray, literally walking away from massive crowds of sick, desperate, needy people.
He walked away from needs.
He did. And later, the apostles in the early church are faced with a very real crisis. Widows are being neglected in the daily food distribution. It is a heartbreaking, legitimate need.
So what do?
The apostles refuse to take on the administrative tasks themselves, delegating it to others specifically so they can protect their core calling to prayer and teaching.
If we synthesize the profound insight running through all those examples, it boils down to one staggering sentence from the text.
What is it?
Jesus never confused compassion with indiscriminate availability.
Indiscriminate availability. Let's tease that apart. What does indiscriminate actually mean?
It means lacking in judgment.
Right. It means treating all requests, all demands, all emails, all emergencies as completely equal.
Exactly. And to live with indiscriminate availability is to suffer from a savior complex. We act as if our finitude, our physical and temporal limits, are some kind of spiritual embarrassment or character flaw that we need to overcome by just grinding harder, drinking more caffeine, and sleeping less.
Like we're supposed to be superheroes.
But the reality is that limits are a divine gift. Limits are the walls that force a river to run deep instead of spreading out into a shallow puddle. Limits force prioritization. They demand clarity.
It is the fundamental difference between a need and an assignment.
Yes, that distinction is crucial.
This was a massive paradigm shift for me. Just because you see a need, and let's be clear, the need might be incredibly real, painful, and heartbreaking, but that does not automatically mean it is your assignment to fix it.
We are culturally conditioned to believe that no is a rejection, a slamming of a door in someone's face. But the truth is that every meaningful no protects a meaningful yes.
If you say yes to every single good cause, every volunteer request, every extra project your boss hands you, your yes gets spread so incredibly thin that it loses all of its weight.
You become universally available, constantly in motion, but practically useless. When a person or an organization says yes to everything, they are implicitly behaving as if they are infinite.
Which is playing God.
Precisely.
Hmm.
It is a massive error in understanding your own nature. Saying no is a humble confession of our creatureliness.
I love that word, creatureliness.
It is an admission that we only have so many hours in a day, and we can only do what we have been specifically entrusted to do. And the mandate is to do that specific thing exceptionally well, rather than doing everything poorly.
Okay, so we have the theological anchor of being an outpost. We understand the 4 buckets to categorize our work: core, supportive, experimental, discontinuable.
Right.
We have the 4 lenses to evaluate them: alignment, impact, cost, sustainability. And we hopefully have the courage to embrace the sacred art of saying no, protecting our yes.
We have all the pieces.
Now we reach the climax of this entire process. How do we actually execute this in the real world? How do we audit our chaotic lives without the entire thing descending into a political civil war or personal paralysis?
The execution phase, the practical audit, is brilliantly methodical. It breaks down the mission portfolio inventory into a step-by-step guide.
Walk me through it.
Step 1 is the foundational requirement. You must write down every outward activity. You have to literally list it on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet. You have to name it.
Why is the physical act of writing it down so important? Can't we just talk about it?
Because unnamed work becomes unexamined work.
Oh, I see.
If you just sit in a room and try to evaluate a vague, cloudy feeling of busyness, you will get nowhere. You have to
Yeah.
see the sheer volume of your commitments laid out in black and white. It forces you to confront the reality of your schedule, not the idealized version you hold in your head.
It's like a financial audit. You can't budget based on vibes. You need to see every credit card swipe. Okay, so we list it all. Step 2 is where the strategy comes in. Identify just one area to deepen and one area to prune.
The brilliance of step 2 is its restraint.
Restraint.
Yeah. The instinct, once you see the mess, is to try and overhaul your entire life or your entire organization in one weekend.
Just burn it all down and start over.
Right. And that always leads to catastrophic failure and burnout. By restricting yourself to deepening one thing, investing more heavily in a core or experimental area, and pruning one thing, cutting a discontinuable area, you build the muscle of decision-making without destroying the morale of the group.
Don't try to boil the ocean, just pick one dead branch. Which brings us to step 3, and I found this to be the most fascinating and perhaps controversial piece of advice in the whole framework.
Writing the rationale.
Yes, write a one-paragraph rationale for every major pruning decision.
It is arguably the most insightful administrative step you can take.
Why force yourself to write a one-paragraph rationale?
Because it protects the organization from the silent killer of selective remembering later on.
Selective remembering. Okay, play that out for me.
Imagine you cut a legacy program today. 6 months from now, at a board meeting or a family dinner, someone will bring it up. They will have forgotten all the exhaustion, the high costs, and the lack of impact. They will only remember the good old days.
Nostalgia creeps in.
The nostalgia will creep in, and people will start questioning why you ever killed such a beloved initiative. The written paragraph acts as an anchor. It forces absolute clarity in the present moment and prevents vague, nostalgic sentiment from rewriting history and making the rules for the future. As we noted earlier, passive preservation is a form of dishonesty.
But let me challenge that from the perspective of someone who hates red tape. Writing a one-paragraph rationale sounds like the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare.
I can see why it feels that way.
Are we taking something deeply personal, like a volunteer's passion project, and turning it into a sterile corporate memo? Does everything need a white paper?
It's a natural fear, but you have to look at what that paragraph actually represents. It is not corporate paperwork. It is a discipline of memory and integrity.
Integrity.
It is a mirror of the conscience. When you sit down and painstakingly write out exactly why you are closing a beloved legacy program, you are actually honoring the people who sacrificed their time and blood to build it years ago.
How does writing a memo honor them?
Because you are giving them the truth.
Oh.
You are giving them a deeply considered, strategic, and mission-driven reason for why things are changing. The alternative is offering a vague, cowardly dismissal like, we're just going in a different direction, which is insulting to their sacrifice.
That makes a lot of sense. The paragraph proves that you have weighed the cost, you have listened, and you are acting in good faith for the survival of the mission.
Exactly. It honors them with the truth, which flows perfectly into the final step. Step 4, communicate changes with gratitude, clarity, and tenderness.
Tenderness. You don't hear that word in management books very often.
No, you don't. You don't just send a cold email on a Friday afternoon saying, program terminated. You have to shepherd the people through the very real emotional grief of the change. You sit with them. You thank them for their years of service.
And you use that written rationale.
And you use that written rationale to explain exactly how this painful no is actually protecting a much larger, vital yes for the future of the organization.
And doing that requires incredible leadership. It requires the emotional maturity to stand in the tension of someone else's disappointment.
It really does.
You have to be willing to let people be temporarily upset with you, knowing in your bones that the pruning is absolutely necessary for the future life and fruitfulness of the vine.
It is a profound framework. It takes us from the chaotic, reactive accumulation of clutter and moves us toward highly intentional, courageous stewardship.
It demands a level of honesty that most groups avoid, but it rewards that honesty with unimaginable freedom and focus.
Freedom to actually do the work you are meant to do.
Think about your own mission portfolio right now as you listen to this. Think about your career path, your volunteer commitments, the expectations of your extended family, the side hustles you started during the pandemic.
Look at all the buckets.
Are you dragging along heavy inherited furniture? Are you carrying things out of sheer habit and sentimentality that are actively draining your capacity for your true core assignment?
Where do you need to prune?
Where in your life do you desperately need to apply the sacred art of saying no?
We have spent a lot of time today talking about the grief of ending things, the pain and the conflict of pruning. But there is a final perspective shift here that changes everything.
What's that final shift?
We fear the grief of letting go. But consider this. What if the greatest grief isn't in letting go of a beloved program? What if the ultimate tragedy is reaching the end of your life, or the end of a long season of leadership, looking back and realizing that you perfectly, immaculately preserved a monument?
But you completely missed the vibrant, living movement of the Spirit right in front of you.
Yes. The courage to prune is not the courage to destroy. Ultimately, it is the courage to be fully alive.
You don't want to get to the end of the week, stare at that jam-packed, color-coded calendar, and realize you perfectly executed a schedule that simply didn't matter.
You want to be effective, not just active.
May we all find the courage to prune the vine. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.